So Dana White's Contender Series 2023 is going to be starting up next month, and I'm going to be giving you guys my early predictions for every week of the season coming up. And I'm going to be starting off with the week number 1. I do consider myself to be pretty on board with all of the upcoming MMA prospects and also pretty on the ball with Dana White's Contender Series, but I want to be super onto it this year. So I'm going to be giving you guys my early predictions after doing all of my research early this year because I want to be onto it. And we're going to be starting off with the week number 1, which does start in a couple of weeks from the time of this video uploading, but we'll be doing week 2, 3, 4, 5, all of that, and I will be giving you guys predictions again when the events do come up closer to the time, especially if there are short notice replacements and stuff like that. You never really know with Contender Series. The last few years haven't been very good for week number 1. We've had 2022 and 2021 season only have 4 fights because a fight has fallen out from the first week, so hopefully that doesn't happen this year, and I'm going to be giving you guys my early predictions for week number 1 in this video. And we're going to be starting out with the very first fight of the season. It's going to be Kevin Borjas taking on Victor Diaz at men's flyweight, which is a great division to have Dana White's Contender Series on because men's flyweight is pretty shallow, and I'm very happy that the UFC is looking to add more talent. Now, Kevin Borjas is from Peru. He is a pretty solid striker. He has like a weird sort of kickboxing, karate stance almost, but I would say his best weapon is actually his boxing. He really loves to rip the body. He finished one of his most recent opponents, Joseph Vieira, with a fantastic body shot with the left hand, slumped him, finish off the fight from there. He's actually got 8 wins by knockout, most of them in the first round as well. But the problem is that I've noticed about Kevin Borjas is I haven't really been able to see a lot of grappling with him because his opponent, Victor Diaz, although stepping in on short notice, is a grappler. He's a pure grappler. He's got Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tattooed on his shoulder. He's a black belt in BJJ. He trains out of American Top Team. But the problem with Victor Diaz in this matchup is he does leave himself to be very hittable on the feet. A lot of the times he throws hooks and overhands and he leaves himself very, very exposed. You can very often see Victor Diaz throw a hook but stay in the pocket for too long and have to pull it back out, and he leaves himself very, very exposed. And I feel like at one point in his career, a very good striker, a very technical striker will catch him. However, I would not really consider Kevin Borjas to be the most technical striker in the world. He is very, very powerful, very good kickboxer. He's got great leg kicks, and Victor Diaz has great leg kicks as well. But I would say that Kevin Borjas, for the most part, gets the job done by his hands. And as I said before, 8 wins by knockout, most of them in the first round. He did lose one fight against Rendo Mendes. Not really the worst loss to have in the world because Rendo Mendes went on to have a pretty good win streak after this fight. And he actually fought against Bogdan Grad, who I will be talking about later on in this episode. But Kevin Borjas, he went out there, he actually knocked down Rendo Mendes, almost finished the fight. I'm surprised he wasn't able to finish the fight. It was a brutal knockdown in the first round, but in the second round, Rendo Mendes knocks him down with a head kick and was able to finish off with a rear naked choke. Now, Victor Diaz, though, very good grappler. And the thing about Kevin Borjas is I just don't really know how good his grappling is. As I said, surprisingly, not a lot of people try to take Kevin Borjas down. And surprisingly, again, you don't really see a lot of grappling out of Kevin Borjas because he gets most of his work done on the feet. And it seems like most of the people that he's fighting against like to strike with him, which is cool. It makes for fun fights and it makes for great knockouts on Kevin Borjas' end. 8 wins and 8 by knockout. But Victor Diaz, you know, he's a grappler, and he is going to go out there and try and take down Kevin Borjas in the first 30 seconds of the fight. He is going to go out there, probably get that takedown as well, and really work his grappling. And Victor Diaz grappling is very, very slick. This guy can transition from submission to submission. His most impressive win, and in fact, I do believe that this is probably the best opponent he's ever fought, is against Rusubik Ibrahimov. Now, you could say that maybe Cleveland McLean's the best person that he's ever fought, but Cleveland McLean went on to have a massive win streak after this loss. But I think that Rusubik Ibrahimov is the best win that he's had on his career. And in that matchup in the third round, when he gets the finish, he turns a triangle into an armbar, and then he turns it back into a triangle, and then he gets the armbar, and he ends up tapping out Ibrahimov. Now, Ibrahimov, the win hasn't aged too well. Ibrahimov now has 13 losses, but it's worth noting that he's only ever lost by finish twice. And one of those finishes was against Victor Diaz. He went out there and fought at bantamweight against Thiago Bello, submitted him in a very, very weird sort of arm triangle choke situation. He had the arm triangle down. The Thiago Bello didn't tap. The ref was kind of like tapping on the back of Victor Diaz, and Victor Diaz thought that the tapping meant that the opponent was tapping, so he released it. Very confusing stuff. Victor Diaz just seems to be a magnet for bad referees, actually, because if you do look at his fight against Rusubek Ibrahimov, he's on the back of Rusubek Ibrahimov in the first round. He's on the back, standing, and the referee separates them, and Victor Diaz has no idea what's going on. Such a weird sort of situation. A weird thing to bring up, but it is true. He ends up in very weird refereeing situations. But in this matchup, though, I'm going to go with Victor Diaz by submission in round number 1. I think he does take down Borjas early. I think he does submit Borjas early. And it does just come down to, can Borjas knock him out? I'm going to go Victor Diaz by submission. Most people are. But I think that Borjas, as I said, has a very good chance of knocking out Victor Diaz, because Victor Diaz does leave himself to be very open on the feet, especially when he gets tired. But I don't think this fight gets extended. I do think Victor Diaz submits Kevin Borjas in the very first round. The second fight of the night is going to be between Payton Talbott and Reyes Cortez, and this is going to be a very interesting matchup. Reyes Cortez has fought on Dana White's Contender Series in the past. He fought against Christian Rodriguez in 2021, was not able to win that decision, but since then he's made a lot of rapid improvements, and he's actually changed up his game quite significantly, because in the past, on Dana White's Contender Series and even before that, he was very, very heavy as a wrestler. He did a lot of wrestling, but now since then he's kind of relied a little bit more on his striking. He's developed his striking, and he's winning fights now with his striking. He was able to knock out Elijah Smith, who I think is a very similar style to Payton Talbott. He was tall for 135 pounds. He was a very slick kickboxer from range, and he was able to do quite good things to Reyes Cortez, but Cortez did catch him eventually. And then against James Settle, Reyes Cortez was just the better fighter in that matchup. It was pretty evident from the get-go, and Reyes Cortez was able to have a lot of success on the feet, but also get a couple of takedowns as well. But I will say it is noted that Reyes Cortez has started to wrestle a lot less than he did before his last Dana White's Contender Series fight against Christian Rodriguez. Now, Payton Talbott, Sean Bitter has compared this guy to Sean O'Malley, and I completely agree. I think Payton Talbott has the potential to be like a Sean O'Malley in both the skill set and the star power, because Payton Talbott, a very unique personality. He's got a unique look about him. He's got a unique fight style about him, and he does fight like Sean O'Malley. He does kind of like do things that Sean O'Malley does in the cage as well, but in his own way. Like when he knocks someone down, sometimes he does a little dance. He'll knock someone down. He'll put his hands on his hips and tell them to stand up, which I actually like. I think a lot of fighters should do that. I think a lot of fighters should knock down their opponents and make them stand back up, because how many times do we see people knock people down, they follow them to the ground, they don't get the finish, and they waste an opportunity? Payton Talbott does not do that. He knocks somebody down. He has no business getting down to the ground. He does not want any of that. He wants to keep the fight standing no matter how hurt his opponent is. And I do like that from Payton Talbott. It does actually create quite a few highlight reel finishes. The problem with Payton Talbott, and this is the biggest kind of gap in his game, is the wrestling defense. Now, Payton Talbott does have a high school wrestling background, but every single time someone goes for a takedown on Payton Talbott, they will get the takedown, but Payton Talbott will scramble and stand up immediately. Every single time, without fail, Payton Talbott will get taken down, but he'll stand up immediately. It's actually quite impressive how it happens. It doesn't matter who you are. You can get the initial takedown on Payton Talbott, but he'll stand back up. Now, I think with time, Talbott could definitely get some better wrestling defense, but that is something that I do have to note. Another thing as well is Talbott sometimes has really good head movement, and then sometimes he doesn't. Like, he did take a lot of shots when he did fight against Christian Rivas and Anthony Jimenez. He just ate a lot of shots on the chin, which is not really the best thing that you can look at when Reyes Cortez does show that he's got KO power, when Reyes Cortez does have a very stiff jab. Reyes Cortez does have very good boxing technique. And Reyes Cortez as well, I didn't even mention this, has a very good leg kick. But I do believe that Payton Talbott can win this matchup. I think if Reyes Cortez goes out there and wrestles, he can beat Payton Talbott, and he probably would beat Payton Talbott if he went out there with a very heavy wrestling game plan. But I'm going to go with Payton Talbott here. I think it's not going to be easy for him, though. I think this fight is closer than the public believes. The public has 86% Talbott. I think there's definitely a big opportunity for an upset here. But I'm going to go with Payton Talbott to win this matchup. I think he can keep the fight on the feet despite getting taken down a couple of times in the matchup. I think he's going to eat a lot of shots on the chin as well. He might get hurt. This is going to probably turn into a war, but it's going to be a really, really fun fight. But then I do think that Talbott eventually finds the KO in the second or the third round over Reyes Cortez in an absolute war, in a fight which Reyes Cortez is probably winning for the most part. But I do just think the power of Talbott, and I think he just finds the chin eventually. It's going to be a fun fight. I think Talbott is a wild fighter. He's like Sean O'Malley. He's very exciting. He's very, very interesting. He's just got a very unique sort of style and personality about him. I think he definitely could be a superstar. I'm going to go with him. And I think that the UFC probably hopes that Talbott wins as well, because they could really build a big name off of him. So give me Payton Talbott to win this matchup, but it is much, much closer than the Tapology votes would suggest. The next fight is going to be a heavyweight fight between Caio Machado and Kevin Szaflarski, and I'm actually pretty happy that we do have some heavyweights on this card, because we definitely do need more heavyweights in the UFC. And Dana White's Contender Series is probably going to be a pretty good way to get some good heavyweight prospects. Now, I don't know how I feel about this fight, because it could be very fun. I think it would be very fun if Caio Machado wins, but I think if Kevin Szaflarski wins, the fight would be very boring, because I had a lot of fun watching Caio Machado's tape, and I didn't have a lot of fun watching Kevin Szaflarski's tape, just because of the way that he fights. Now, as a heavyweight, he's actually quite technical, you know. He does seem like a guy that probably could fight at 205 pounds. He just doesn't quite have the body for 205 pounds, I'll probably just put it that way. But Kevin Szaflarski, for the most part, actually is very technical on the feet. He does keep his hands pretty low, but he's pretty good boxer. He's pretty good, he throws kicks, and he is, for the most part, he really does like to grind on his opponents, whether that is just by being high volume in the boxing, working the body, or clinching. And he does do quite a lot of clinching. He does quite like the clinch, which is why his fights aren't really that fun. Now, Caio Machado also loves the clinch, but he uses the clinch for a very different way. As his fights start, it does depend who his opponent is. He will just rush in there, go absolutely crazy, he'll go super aggressive. Over his last couple of opponents, he's gone out there and just tried to finish them in the first 30 seconds of the fight. But I will make note of this. He fought Edson Lopez, who was 44 years old, and Lee Main, who was 54 years old. These guys are the same age as my dad, if not older than my dad. And he's just fighting old men. He was meant to fight Paulo Renato Jr. on Dana White's Contender Series. When he took on Chris Larson, who was 34 years old at the time, and actually looked like a pretty good fighter, to be honest, at heavyweight, he fought Chris Larson with a lot more respect than he did Lee Main and Edson Lopez. He just went out there like an absolute madman against Lee Main and Edson Lopez. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, I genuinely wasn't that impressed by his fight against Lee Main and Edson Lopez. Recently, he has beaten Lee Main in the past as well, but I just, like, he's just sloppy on the feet, you know, he's super aggressive, he rushes into the clinch. As soon as he gets the fight down to the ground, though, he is super, super slick. You can see 2 armbar wins, you don't see that heavyweight often. Very, very slick on the ground, but on the feet, he's unbelievably hittable. He'll throw a combination, and his hands will be down, his chin will be up, he doesn't move his head. But the thing is, I don't really think that Kevin Szaflarski is going to be a guy that can really expose that. So I really would not be that surprised if Caio Machado just goes out there and finishes him in the first round. Maybe he gets a submission, maybe gets the knockout on the feet, because he does have crazy power. He knocked out Chris Larson with a 1-punch left hook. It was an insane left hook as Chris Larson was coming in. But once again, Chris Larson just had no head movement. You know, Chris Larson kind of walked around like the big school bully. Like, he literally walked around, was built like none other, mate, like massive bodybuilder, and he's walking around the cage kind of like this, and he was moving forward after throwing a combo, and he's got doinked with a massive left hook by Caio Machado. But Caio Machado, he's not very technical, but he's very effective in everything that he does. Now, you don't have to be very technical to be a heavyweight, but I think that Kevin Szaflarski can just kind of outlast Caio Machado. Another thing that I'll say as well is Caio Machado has never seen the second round recently. It's not that he has never seen the second round, because he has. He just hasn't seen the second round in quite a long time. In fact, since 2019. And after his fight against Edson Lopez, he looked pretty tired. And it's also worth noting as well, again, Edson Lopez gassed out 3 minutes into that fight. He was fighting a 44-year-old man that was just gassed out of his mind. And, like, man, I'm just not impressed by the level of competition he's fighting. and he's just really, really sloppy. But he's exciting. He's a very exciting fighter. I think if he could become more technical, I think he could be a very good prospect at this weight class. But Kevin Szaflarski, he just got the fundamentals down a little bit more. He is a pretty boring heavyweight. He does love the clinch. He can fight from range. You know, you see he's got an 81-inch reach, so he does have pretty good boxing. The thing is with Kevin Szaflarski, he's also pretty hittable on the feet. Maybe Caio Machado can get the finish in the first round, but I'm going to go with Kevin Szaflarski by a very late finish or decision. And I think if he gets a finish, it wouldn't just be because Kevin Szaflarski's got one punch KO power, because to be honest, he doesn't. But I do think that maybe Kevin Szaflarski can wear on Caio Machado, get a very late finish, or win a decision. So I'm going to go with Szaflarski by very late finish or to win by decision. I just wasn't super impressed by Caio Machado when I was watching his tape. I had a lot of fun, but at the end of the day, he's fighting old men that are like older than my dad. So I'm just not impressed by that. I think that Kevin Szaflarski's fought better competition. He's looked better against better competition. I think that Kevin Szaflarski goes out there and gets this one done. The next fight is going to be Tom Nolan taking on Bogdan Grad at lightweight. And it's going to be a pretty interesting fight because Tom Nolan is from Australia and Bogdan Grad is from Austria. And if I'm not mistaken, Bogdan Grad is going to be fighting to be one of the first Austrian fighters in the UFC ever. But in this matchup, it's going to be very interesting. I don't actually know how tall Bogdan Grad really is because I was watching some of his fights on UFC Fight Pass and they had him listed at 5'7". Tapology has him listed at 5'9". Tom Nolan is listed at 6'3", which is massive. And Tom Nolan, like, he must be fighting some really big lightweights because a lot of the time when he's fighting against his opponents, he didn't look massive compared to them. But in this matchup, he is probably going to look pretty big. You know, if you think of 6'3" lightweights, you think of Jalen Turner, you think of Joel Alvarez, you think of Sam Patterson, who honestly could be 6'4", he's that tall. But Tom Nolan, 6'3" at lightweight. I think that this guy fights like Dan Hooker. If you think of Dan Hooker, you can kind of make a rough comparison to Tom Nolan. Maybe some people will disagree with me with that, but it's just the fact that he's mainly a kickboxer. It's the fact that he's got really good knees. He likes to throw a lot of knees, and he does time knees well. He actually did knock out his opponent, Aiden Aguilera, with a knee multiple times in that fight. He initially knocked him down and pretty much out with a knee, but he actually landed an illegal knee, and then they took time off. He got a point removed, and then he knocked him out with a knee after the timeout. It was a pretty interesting fight. In that matchup as well, Tom Nolan had to defend a lot of takedowns. He had to defend a lot of takedowns against Adam Cook, who he ended up finishing, mainly due to exhaustion on Adam Cook's end. Adam Cook had a lot of success in the grappling early on, but Tom Nolan had a lot of success in the striking early on, and then Adam Cook was gassed out by the second round from all of the grappling. Tom Nolan was still pretty fresh, and he finished him with a standing TKO over a gassed Adam Cook. And then the fight against Niam Steven was interesting because Tom Nolan got on top of Niam Steven and finished him with ground and pound after dominating pretty much the whole round on top. Now, Bogdan Grad, for the most part, is also a striker. I have seen him offensively wrestle. He did offensively wrestle against Christian Mark in their matchup. Christian Mark, I would say, was probably a lot bigger than Bogdan Grad. I think he was listed at about 6 foot or so. Bogdan Grad listed at 5'7", 5'9". Who really knows how tall he is? But the point is, Mark was much bigger and much taller than Bogdan Grad in that matchup and was having success on the feet. But Bogdan Grad did eventually get a takedown. He got the standing guillotine choke, choked him out unconscious as well later on into the second round. And then he fought against Renzo Mendes most recently. And Renzo Mendes is the guy that took the O of Kevin Borjas. And Kevin Borjas fights at flyweight. Renzo Mendes used to fight at 135 pounds, and Bogdan Grad did not look bigger than Renzo Mendes. I don't think Bogdan Grad is a very big lightweight whatsoever. He's pretty good. He's very flashy on the feet. He does throw spinning wheel kicks because he has got a spinning wheel kick KO over Tudor Duomenchi. Once again, I don't know what this guy's real record is because on Fight Pass they had him listed at 6-5. On Tapology they've got him listed at 6-3. But Duomenchi was having way too much success in the striking for my liking in this matchup. I think Tom Nolan could really watch that Tudor Duomenchi fight and have very similar success to Tudor Duomenchi, in my opinion. I think Tom Nolan can go out there. I think he goes out there and beats Bogdan Grad. I do believe Tom Nolan is the much better striker. Tom Nolan's a decent grappler as well, but he wants the fight on the feet. His takedown defense has looked pretty good. You know, he was taken down and controlled for a little bit against Adam Cook, but Adam Cook did slow down towards the end of the fight. But that was an interesting fight, and maybe if Bogdan Grad was to go out there and grapple, I think that we probably would see a similar matchup between Tom Nolan and Adam Cook with Bogdan Grad, where Adam Cook in this case Bogdan Grad, is having success in the wrestling and the grappling, but whenever the fight is on the feet, Tom Nolan is beating him up. And I'm going to go with Tom Nolan in this one here. I do believe that Tom Nolan is going to land something on Bogdan Grad. It really could be a knee, Dan Hooker style, but I do think Tom Nolan does get it done over Bogdan Grad. I think he's the better striker in a mostly striking matchup, and I think he can get it done. So give me Tom Nolan to win this matchup by knockout. I see a lot of people picking Bogdan Grad. Interesting. I don't think Bogdan Grad wins this one. I think Tom Nolan's got it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Main event in week number 1 of Dana White's Contender Series 2023 is going to be Cesar Almeida taking on Lucas Fernando. And Lucas Fernando is a very good MMA prospect at middleweight, but his opponent Cesar Almeida has an incredibly impressive kickboxing background, which does include world titles, which does include a win over Alex Pereira, which does include a trilogy with Alex Pereira, and all 3 of those fights did go the distance. He has fought in MMA 3 times, but there's not a lot to go off of with those MMA fights because he's won them all in the first round. He's won them all by knockout in the first round, as you would kind of expect. He's not really fighting the best levels of competition. But, like, one thing I can tell you is this guy is really good. Now, it kind of goes without saying, you know, former Glory kickboxer, kickboxing guy, former world champion, but he is really good, and he's incredibly defensively sound on the feet. Very technical as well, like incredibly technical on the feet. And he's just very good at mixing everything up. He mixes up his shots to the body and to the head. And his opponent, Lucas Fernando, is a very good MMA prospect himself. I believe he's 26, 27 years old, from Brazil. Very good prospect. For the most part, Lucas Fernando is probably a striker, but he did mix up a little bit of wrestling against Yancy Silva. He had to defend a lot of takedowns against Fabio Aguilar in the clinch. And I do think that Lucas Fernando is going to go out there and attempt takedowns on Cesar Almeida, but it comes down to can he get those takedowns? Because Cesar Almeida, in my opinion, in fact, I just think he's better on the feet, and his kickboxing background does kind of prove that. His MMA fights do prove that, but they're not over very good competition at all. They really aren't. But I do think that Cesar Almeida can go out there and knock out Lucas Fernando, but I'm not going to be picking Cesar Almeida because I don't know how good Cesar Almeida's wrestling is, and I don't know how good his grappling is either. I've got absolutely no idea how good he is at wrestling and grappling, whereas I do know Lucas Fernando is a good grappler, and he's a pretty decent wrestler as well. He doesn't really go for offensive takedowns all that much. It's not really his game, but it better be his game in this matchup. I wouldn't be that surprised if Cesar Almeida knocks out Lucas Fernando, but I do believe that Lucas Fernando can go out there and get the win in this matchup. But I do just want to give Cesar Almeida his credit, because on Tapology, 88% of people are picking Fernando, and most of them are picking him to win by knockout. Like, do these guys know who Cesar Almeida is? Have they seen his kickboxing fight? Cesar Almeida is incredibly defensively sound. He's very good at either head movement or he gets his guard up there as well. He actually manages to block a lot of shots with his forearms, which is quite interesting. And he's just a very good striker. Like, he's just incredibly good at striking. Like, yeah, as I said, like, he's got a very good shell. He does like to kind of raise his hands, and he will defend, like, punches with his forearms like that instead of with the gloves, and it's just good. He's just very good defensively. And Lucas Fernando, I think, on the feet, you know, he's a good fighter, very good leg kicks, but I just want to see Lucas Fernando get this fight down to the ground, where I do believe he's going to have the advantage. There's not a lot of evidence to prove that, because Cesar Almeida, I've never seen this guy grapple. He's always just knocking people out in his MMA fights, and then kickboxing fights they're kickboxing fights, right? So I don't know how good Cesar Almeida's takedown defense is going to be, but I think that Cesar Almeida either wins by KO in the first round, or Lucas Fernando wins by submission in the very first round. I'm going to go with Lucas Fernando. I'm going to go with him to win like an arm triangle choke. I think he's going to take down Cesar Almeida, get on top, and then submit him with an arm triangle choke. So give me Lucas Fernando to win by submission in round number 1. Do you think that Lucas Fernando can knock out Cesar Almeida on the feet? I would be impressed if he does so, but let me know what you think about this fight in the comments below. I think this is a much closer fight than people are going to give it credit for, because Lucas Fernando isn't just a guy that is a pure wrestler or a pure grappler. He is a striker for the most part, which I hope he turns into a wrestler for this one. But let me know what you think in the comments below. I think week number 1 is going to be a pretty fun week. You've got Borjas versus Diaz starting it off. Going to be a fun fight for as long as it lasts. Talbott versus Cortez is going to be a banger. Machado versus Szaflarski. Not so much looking forward to that one, but it could be fun. Tom Nolan versus Bogdan Grad is going to be fun, and this fight is going to be very interesting. So let me know what you think of my predictions. Let me know what you think of the card in the comments below, and I do look forward to Dana White's Contender Series 2023. I'm really looking forward to Dana White's Contender Series. And just as always, yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you guys so much for watching. And as I did just say, please let me know what you think in the comments below.